job is to somehow make them curious enough or persuade them by hook or crook to get more aware of themselves and where they came from and what they are into and what is already there, and just to bring it out. This is what compels me to compel them, and I will do it by whatever means necessary.
Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show, where our goal is to educate, inspire, and encourage dads to become a better version of themselves. Today we got a good guest on today, AJ Smith. I'd like to AJ and I met through. First of all, good morning, brother.
Good morning, man. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing today?
Man, it's a Saturday morning. I'm up and stretching. Get a little of this cold Chicago air in my nose.
Yeah. As we know, as you out there checking your chickens, but I'll let AJ explain that at a at a later date in the episode, right? But just want to give you guys a bit of an introduction to AJ, right? So AJ and I met through Facebook, right, on some dad stuff. So I've been doing the Awesome Black Dad Show for a little over about 2.5, 3 years at this point. And AJ has written, he goes on these, I won't call them rants, but he makes these long posts on Facebook, and they're very deliberate. And he made one about his dad, and I actually took that post and made a blog post. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely hit up the Awesome Black Dad's website and check out that post, and I'll share that again as well. But we also met through a good friend, Michael Drayton, through Facebook, who does a fatherhood photo shoot every year out by the lake, right? And I'll have more information about that later. But that's basically how AJ and I met, and and through that time on Facebook, he's definitely made some inspiring posts about fatherhood. AJ is a father of two grown men at this three boys. Is it 3 boys or 2 boys?
I have my oldest is a girl, okay. And if I don't say that, man, it's like having a little wife. I'll get in trouble.
Fair enough. So I walked that one back, but father of 3, right? And the reason AJ is on the show is we want to talk about. He made a recent post about a Smokey Norfolk Instagram post where his son, 16-year-old son, was laying on his chest. And before we get into that, like I want to give AJ an opportunity to tell you guys about who he is and what he's about. So AJ, go ahead, give us a little bit of who you are, bro.
Good morning, Jarrell. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, brother. Good morning.
Well, I'm just a regular guy. That's what I like to tell people. A couple of things about me. I grew up in Roseland, grew up in Robbins, Illinois. Now I'm in the south suburbs. Every facet of life I've seen. Military guy, college educated, still in school now. I decided to go back to school to work on special education.
Oh, bless your heart. Bless your heart.
Thank you, man. Just to get back to the community, start working in the school system. So, man, father 3, divorcee. Just all around good life,
Mm-hmm.
I've been working in transportation for, I want to say about 13 years now. So it's just a regular guy. That's it. But I'm passionate about relationships.
Okay.
Passionate about fatherhood. Passionate about treating people kind, being human, showing love. Not allowing relationships to be destroyed over situations. So I'm just a regular guy and a man's man. Listen, we get together whenever we do the photo shoots.
Right.
You'll see me with a big leather bag that the son of the guys call a purse, handcrafted. All right.
Right.
By the mom in Mexico.
Right.
But I'll come and I have my big bottle of bourbon and my cigars for the guys, and I'm ready to just be with the guys and hang out. So that's who I am, man.
Yeah.
A hillbilly at heart.
Yeah. A hillbilly at heart. So, excuse me. So let's get into it, man. So what I really want to talk about, right? And so about a week ago, at Thanksgiving, I believe Smokey Norfolk made a Instagram post with him and his son. I guess it appeared that they were relaxing and resting for chilling out for Thanksgiving, and his son had fell asleep on his chest, and so he took a picture of that and he made the post on Instagram saying to the effect, but not verbatim, is basically he's enjoying the time that is, and mind you, his 16-year-old son is falling asleep on his chest as he did when he was 16 months old. And he also said that, his 16-year-old son is now his size, right? Yeah. And so you would imagine when you visualize that, it's like a grown man laying on your chest, right? And falling asleep. And so obviously it made it to social media. It was on social media, but then it made to Facebook, and people have their share of opinions. Okay. Yeah, which is okay, right? I'm here for all the meaningful conversations and meaningful debates that we could have, right? That's where growth comes from. Meaningful for sure. And then so as I engaged in some of these conversations, man, it just, I won't say it rocked me to my core, but it's just, as a father, it just the way we were raised, and I want to be careful with the way that we talk about masculinity, right? Because I don't like the word toxic masculinity, because I feel like it's an attack on us as men. And I've talked about that before. And we can definitely get into that later. But the gist of it is that a large majority of I shouldn't say a large, but a good portion of the men that I've seen on my timeline and in some of these groups had a lot of, for lack of a better term, toxic things to say, right? And so when you made your post about, your relationship with your father, and your father passed away, and how that picture connected with you, can you talk a little bit about, how that picture connected and resonated with you?
So when I saw it on a friend's post, a good friend at that, who had a different opinion from mine, and I was okay with it. And even while I was speaking to him in conversation to some of his friends, I had to let them know first, I'm not attacking you for your perspective. I'm just letting you know that there's an other side of this. When I saw the picture, it didn't affect me in a negative way at all. What it did is show me that this man has a beautiful relationship with his son. And I have two sons. I have a daughter that's 23. Mm-hmm. I gotta keep saying it or she'll get me. But I have my boys, one who just made 21 years old, Dakari, and the younger, who's 19, Andre. I have my boys. And for me, one thing that I always wanted to do was make sure that they were able to express themselves and have a place for safety within me as their father. I grew up with my father in and out of prison. I grew up with my father, my mother taking me away, and we'll move away from my dad, and then he'll come back. We'll get back together. I didn't have that relationship that I wanted. That I wanted with my sons with my own father. So for me, when I saw the picture, what I saw was a man who just held himself together and said, listen, no matter what happens, this is still my baby. And sometimes we forget that in parenting, the father is just as important as the mother. And that's just a social concept that we kind of step back from because of the way that parenting is looked at through gender roles. Mm-hmm. So if there was a son laying on his mother's chest, it would be some negative and even some perverted things that they'd say, mm-hmm. but it's more acceptable. Mm-hmm. But for a man, it turns into like this thing, man, that's for me, it's hard to describe how people can swallow the concepts that they do when it deals with sons and their father. I can remember my son texting me from downstairs one day, and I hope he don't get upset about me telling this short story, and it won't be a lot. But he texted me, and it had to be like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. He's downstairs. I'm upstairs. He's like, Daddy, can we go for a ride? I need to talk. Now, this was like this year. This wasn't like a couple of years ago. This year. He's 19 years old. I'm like, all right, give me a minute. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was up playing Madden, whatever. I was up, up anyway.
Yeah.
So I come downstairs and he's like quiet, but he's stone faced. And you know, it was a little warm outside. I was like, come on, let's just go outside and, you know, sit in the driveway and talk for a little bit. I really didn't want to go for a ride. It's 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I keep a couple of concepts in my head about being out that late, you know, so with being a black male, I'll just say it. So I was like, hey, let's go stand in the driveway. We sit down and sit and talk. So we go out there, and immediately when we start talking, I see him crack, tears, everything. And it was basically life was stressing him out. Life was stressing him out. He had come home from college, you know, relationships, basic life things that I have already gotten through was beating him up. I'm still dealing with the stuff that he's dealing with, but through experience, I'm able to get through it and even mold him. So without those type of relationships, that's the head on the chest relationship. Without that, now my son is running around all over the place and can't really deal with his situations. So that's what I saw when I saw that picture. I saw when that kid gets in trouble, he's gonna run to his dad, and his dad needs to be able to connect with him to help him.
Yeah, and so and I'm glad you brought it up in that way, right? Because one of the things that I said on the post as I was reading through, because I was being very careful about when you hear certain people their opinions about certain things, you know, to kind of whether or not if you engage what that's going to turn out to be, right? So I pick and choose where if I feel like I want to fight and I want to debate today, then let's go for it. Otherwise, if I really feel like I just want to get say my piece and walk away, then I'll do that accordingly. And so one of the things that I said, I was just like, man, look, love your kids the way they need to be loved. Stop trying to love your kids in the way that society is telling you should love them, or loving them through the pain and trauma that you have in your life, right? And I felt like that was my perception of a lot of the comments related to this picture. A lot of the guys were concerned, it sound, with the way that it looked to other people. They was like, there was a gay term thrown out, like, oh, that's gay. It's acceptable for girls, but it's not acceptable for guys. He's a grown man. Like, and quite honestly, I get it, but I also understand that I didn't have that experience. Like, I didn't grow up being able to hug my father, right? So I don't know. It's uncomfortable. It is. Whether it's me being able to hug I can't tell you last time maybe I hugged an uncle. Like we dapped up and gave five, which is equivalent, probably to a man giving a hug. But my father-in-law I hug, or he'll give me a hug. So it's just like it's definitely a cultural mind shift there, right? And it's just like it made me think about wondering what we as men have grown through and what we have to deal with and how our minds have been shaped, right? And so I don't want to monopolize the conversation. Real, I know you have some perspectives on the picture and what happened, man. What you got?
Man, actually, initially looking at the picture, I'm like, but I actually believe that it was. I felt like, okay, this is a beautiful thing. Like, my son, he's my oldest son. 21, he's like 6'10", so I kind of just he stressed out, but I kind of visualize him laying on my chest and how I would feel just like Smokey Norfolk. It's like no matter how old they get, man, it's still your child. You know what I'm saying? It's still a young man who's trying to learn his way. So I definitely would welcome, and even my sons, man. Every now and then, I'm kind of rough on them, but every now and then I just stop them and give them a hug and tell them I love them, kiss them on the head. You know what I mean? Like, it's really nothing, because they always see the extra masculine side of me, right?
Right.
They rarely see that. Hey, come here, man. Talk to me. You know what I'm saying? Hug me. It's okay. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's like a weird moment. It's like, come here, man, give me a hug. Because I'm so playful, they don't know if I'm gonna punch them or not. You know what I mean? So it's one of them situations. But I feel like I don't even take into account my relationship with my father. I just because the fathers before us, man, especially coming from the South, they were taught not to
Yeah.
show emotion at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
couldn't.
Especially man to man emotion.
They
You know what
couldn't.
I'm saying? So yeah, exactly. It,
Yeah.
it was just like taboo. It's like you just don't do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's the cloth we come from. But I think we've evolved as fathers from then to now into a more of we're comfortable in our skin. We're comfortable being whatever they call feminine or whatever. They call it feminine, but it's like you just showing love. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I think it's also just a little plot, man, to kind of keep fathers, black fathers, from being emotional and from showing that type of love. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
okay to show love to your child. That's your child.
Yeah.
You don't push them. I mean, imagine somebody, a father pushing their son off the chest, like, boy, get up, that's gay.
Right.
Imagine a psychological
Yes.
damage that he's just done on that one action.
Yep, that one action, man. I mean, there's a ton of things that come to mind when you bring up all of that, right? And so it's like, if think of it this way: if you never hugged your son, he probably will never experience at a young age a man embracing or showing his level of affection and what that looks like. So if he doesn't learn that from you, where does he learn that from? So when he grows up, he gives the same thing to his son without even knowing, right? And one of the other things I thought about immediately, I don't know if you guys remember, excuse me, but back when Allen Iverson was in the early parts of his career, there was a picture of him kissing his son, right? And I believe, and it was his kid was a toddler, right? And kissed him on the mouth, and it was just like, oh, you know what I mean? And I can't say that that's something that I would do today, but I understand. I don't know that makeup. Right? I don't know what his son needed. I know that, but that is a show of affection. And why do we always have to sexualize certain things when it comes to our kids? Right? And so one of the things I want to talk about that's important too in your post, AJ, just to kind of start bringing it back a little bit, is you wrote, one of the parts in there is you wrote, he tried to embrace me and I rejected him due to a verbal altercation we had. I never want to relive that with my sons. Secondly, I never want to wait until my sons are on their deathbed or going through a traumatic experience to comfort them, like like when they were children, right? And one of the guys in one of the posts with the Smokey Norfolk picture, one of the immediate things he said was like, "Who died?" And I was like, somebody had to die for him to embrace his son in that type of way.
Okay. It's okay if somebody died because he's going through stress.
Right. So in that part of the post, like what was driving you there? Like when you go back and talk about like that relationship with your father,
So I use this as the basis of my life after February of 2009. My father and I. So my father is an old gangster disciple. I'll just say that. High-ranking guy, old gangster disciple. He was of the streets. I won't even say his name, but
okay.
That was my father. He was what they call he was sinister. Mm-hmm. He was an animal. You're talking 6'3", 6'4", 340, 400 in a good year. Mm-hmm. And so large, his ring size was size 18. In his casket, I put my hand on his, and I looked like a child to him. I was an adult. My father and I didn't have a great relationship when he wasn't in prison because he was a street urchin. He was a tough guy. He went through a lot. At I think he was 18 years old, a man walked into his house and killed his brother, killed his mom, shot his dad. At 18 years old, that's it for a lot of people. They crash. My father, as strong as he tried to be, that dealt with him for quite some time. So that kind of like cultivated the animal, Mike Tyson-like animal on the streets, where people were like terrified of him. His voice was as deep as Barry White's. His skin was as black as it can be, like a shade lighter than the blackest person you've ever seen. Red eyes all the time, just a loud, deep voice, and he commanded himself. So with that in play, if my father walked in the house, I froze because he wasn't able to kind of separate life like that. Like, all right, this is my family. This is, I'm going out to make money. I'm gonna make sure y'all safe. That's it. As I got older, he went to prison through my high school years. His best friend became like the dad for me. My uncle, old man, that's my uncle. And he became the dad for me. So when my dad came back home, it was kind of a like, hey, I'm grown now, and I had a house. I'm 18 years old with a house. And he come to my house, man, I'm grown, Mm-hmm. And when I talked to him and I had a conversation. My mom lived 2 doors down from me. So she set it up like that. Mm-hmm. And he came in the house and he said something to me and I bucked up at him. This guy's a giant. I'm 6'1", 3/4, mm-hmm. At the time, probably about 220. And he looked at me in my eye, turned around and walked out the door. Went next door to my mom's and said, I think, in his exact words, I think this nigga killed me. Just like that. So our growth, father, son, it was kind of all over the place. I left to go to the Air Force, and I had been gone for some time. They didn't even tell my dad I was leaving. I was like, whatever. And my mom called me. We had a homeless shelter on 78th and Cottage Grove. No, it was 74th and Cottage Grove. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I got somebody here who want to talk to you. I was like, who? I'm thinking it's like one of the shelter people. It was my dad. And he was like, hey, son. And then I was like, what's up, Dad? What's going on? You never told me you were leaving, like that. And then it got silent. And you hear, how moms are in the background. You a big old baby over here crying on the phone with your son. And I'm like, my dad's crying. Not the superhero. No, he ain't not crying. So we started to talk. So when they came down to the portion where I rejected my father, that tumultuous relationship growing up, him and I, finally come to head when I got a little older and we became best friends. I worked for Comcast at the time. He was fixing cars out on the street and I would stop, and every day that I was working in the area, I'll go get him breakfast. He wanted catfish tails right off of the Dan Ryan. He wanted catfish tails. That's what he eat. He wanted pork chop sandwich from Maxwell's, So we would eat lunch all the time. Him and I, to kind of roll it forward, him and I got into a conversation. He had health issues and I was taking him to the doctor all the time. I was his person. I had an issue at the time where I had to go see the doctor, same date, same time. So my brother was going to take him, my younger brother. So my younger brother happened to be behind on time. And my dad called me, cussing me out. And he's cussing me out. And it snapped me back to when I was younger, like, whoa, bruh. And I bucked up at him like, man, F you, man, don't even talk to me. Hang up the phone. And now, mind you, I'm married, got kids, all this stuff. I'm working hard just to to keep relationships. And finally, my brother got there to the doctor. 2 days later, my father called me and says he'd been calling. I wouldn't answer. I just wouldn't. I didn't feel like it. And he called me and I was sitting on the phone with my ex-wife, on the bed with my ex-wife, and she was like, answer your dad. So I picked up the phone. I was like, hello. Just one of those, hello, like, what you want? Hello. And he was like, hey, son, how you doing? I was like, I'm good. He said, let me talk to you for a second. He said, I want to apologize to you because, man, I'm going to be honest with you. That appointment was important to me. It was from my heart. And be honest, I was just scared. I was scared. And I was like, yeah, okay. All right. And, he kind of had a little jousting from there. And then I hung up the phone. 2 things. I remind you, my father is this guy who is like, I ain't never seen a soft side of him. I saw my father's legs one time outside of pants. He wore shorts one time in my life. And he was walking around the house, coming from the bathroom to the room, and he had on shorts one time. So it is weird, So I was, she was like, what did he say? I told her. And I sat and I started to think. I couldn't sleep. I said 2 things. My father had never apologized to me in my life. I said the second thing, he's never told me that he was afraid of anything. He wasn't scared of anything. So for me, I was like, man, that's messed up. That's how I was thinking in my head. That's messed up. All right. My father started trying to call me again so we can get back to our pork chops and catfish tails, and I wouldn't answer. About 2 weeks go past, I don't answer him. I'm like, I'm gonna get over there. I'll get in my Comcast truck, I roll past, see if he's there. I never did it. I get a call from a lady that was in the area, say, hey, you need to go and check on your dad. I was like, wow, what's going on, Miss Rose? He was like, he's in the hospital. I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, he's in Jackson Park. I was like, shit, let me get over here to the hospital. Hurry up and get there. I get there and I walk in the door and he's sedated. They in a medical coma. Then they started telling me all the things that was going on with him. We end up talking to the doctor. He ended up being set up for surgery for that following Wednesday. This is a Monday morning. It's like, cool. Wednesday, I prepare, get there early in the morning. My father's there in a bed, still induced, and I start talking to him. This is me in the weakest point that I've ever been in my life, because I see my 6'3", 6'4" superhero laying in his bed with tubes all in his nose. And I said, I know you could hear me, but and you probably can't speak back to me, but that's a good thing. I want to say some things to you. And as I'm talking to him, I'm apologizing. Like, man, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have embraced you. I should have talked to you. I looked at my father wear a size 14 shoe. I'm like massaging his foot. Like, man, I'm trying to get life, let you know I'm here. And I'm talking to him and rubbing his hands and I'm just talking to him. And it wasn't like, I was just like, hey, get yourself prepared. When you're done, when this is over, we're gonna have our time. I left from there. They say, hey, we need you to go downstairs to fill out some paperwork. I go downstairs to fill out paperwork. One of the old guys say, hey, go check on your dad. I said, I just came from up there. He said, no, go check on your dad. He said, you need to check now. I run up the stairs and they resuscitate my father. I mean, I'm shocked. They're like using the defibrillator. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And the doctor said, right now we can't get his pulse back. So it got really tough there where I'm back in the hallway and they coming back and forth like, hey, we got to stop CPR. We got to stop, trying to resuscitate him. And I was so hurt and mad and disappointed with myself that I attacked the doctor when he tried to come and say, I need to stop. And because my brothers and cousins were there, they grabbed me, they kind of like kept me. That was the rejection that I spoke about in the message where he tried to embrace me. And it wasn't like a physical thing, but it was a thing where I'm trying to get back connected with you and you wouldn't allow me to. So that's how the rejection came in the story.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, right, what happens with most of us, and this is one of the things in terms of what we've kind of naturally been taught. It's like we don't begin to show that emotion until somebody's gone. Like clockwork, when somebody passes away, the things that people have to say, right, they would never say to the person while they were here, right? They stand up at the podium, they look over at the person in the casket, have these tears in their eyes, and they're like, oh man, if he was still here, I would say, that time you did this for me, or you were the nicest person, or they say all these glowing things, or I wish that I could just hold your hand one more time or give you a hug. And I'm not saying these things that as if I don't do these things or I haven't recognized these things. I do try to change them when I do recognize it. But this is what I meant from parenting. And we had a conversation last week with Robbie Harges where it was like, we talked a little bit about parenting from our trauma, right? And some of that trauma we know, and some of it we don't, and we don't recognize, right? And our kids, to some degree, show us that in little spurts, right? It's opportunities for us to grow. It's opportunities for us to do some things a little different, right? And I don't know, and I'm not saying that I would love to change the mindset of some people. It's just interesting that even when it comes to like your seed, like these kids, I don't care if he's a grown man, he came from you.
That's right.
He came from you. Like the masculine thing to say, if somebody touch my kids, I'm going to jail or you're going to put me in the dirt, right? So it's like you're willing to go that far, but you're concerned about somebody a grown man being like somebody taking a picture with your son laying on your chest. Like if you put juxtapose those two things together, like how are they that different? Right. And why is it so? Even, I said I didn't really want to talk about masculinity, but I feel like that's where it has to go. Right. Yeah. Because again, in your post too, it was like you figured out how to separate masculinity and femininity. Right. And I think a lot of what we do today is men perpetuate that. Like in some of our circles, it's like, oh man, it's gay or it's this or that. And we do need to learn how to separate the two. And so it's just really problematic in that way, man. And it just struck me the way that certain people think about, oh man, it's a grown man laying on his chest, man. He ain't gonna do it. And here's part of my story, right? My youngest, and how I still struggle with it, right? And Jarrell and I talk about this too, right? Because I think he has similar stories. Like our youngest boys are very close in age. So when they see us, we come in the door, it's like, hey, daddy. And they'll run up. And so they're still short, right? So it's like they'll run up and they'll be right at that section. And you're like, well, wait, son.
Watch the jewels.
Watch the jewels. Or, you'll be sitting down and they come climb up on you and they want to play. And it's like my immediate reaction is just like, well, wait, you know what I mean? Hold on. And we have to be mindful of that because that's what we're teaching in certain instances, right? Because that physicality, we push them away, but we don't explain to them. Like, you got to be verbal and say, well, hey, son, wait, don't watch the jewels, like Rail said.
If you would let me interject 1 second.
Yeah.
We do that.
Yes.
The other side is, how many times have we taken the opportunity to even talk and teach our boys about their own bodies? And that's the subject that father to son, you usually don't listen. The ladies will take their daughters in a bathroom and talk to them about their bodies and everything that's going to happen. Yeah. For us, it's pretty much, hey man, don't touch me there. Watch it, man. But they don't understand why you don't want to be touched there. They don't understand why if you accidentally get hit there, it's such a big thing because we don't talk to them about it. We fail to talk to our sons about our places of weakness because we always want to look strong. I went through life as a younger child, in a molested relationship with family members. We moved all over the place. I went through some things, but I was able to talk to my sons about it and told them, listen, this is why you protect yourself. I'm not, I've never been in a situation with men. I've never been in that type of situation, but I had to let them know and understand that their bodies was valuable. And it was the hallway, the canal, the cave to your soul. And if you don't protect it, people can really, I think there's a Bible verse that says, who you yield your members to, you become a servant of. And if you don't protect your body, you're going to end up servicing or being a servant to a lot of things. So that concept of not talking to your child about why, whoa, stay away from that, don't do that. If you don't talk to them the full circle, he's gonna he's gonna pick it up, and your grandson will never know, and your great grandson will never know. All I know is granddaddy said, don't touch him here, don't do this, hey, stand away, hit me in my hip, So I just put that in there because we just fail to think that way sometimes, and it leaves them weaponless. They don't understand. They just saying we're doing it because,
Yeah, absolutely. So AJ, after hearing your story, I got a question for you. How do you feel about forgiveness? What would you say is your lesson on forgiveness?
That story that I told you about my dad in the hospital is my story of forgiveness. I never ever want to feel that way again. I think I put a post up a couple of days ago and somebody took a portion of it and shared it. And I said, I'm okay with being unfriended, and I'm okay with unfriending people, but I never block them because I always want to leave a door open to heal the place that we failed in. And some people don't pick up that concept, but it came through the pain of I can literally feel myself talking to my dad like, yeah, whatever, okay, all right. And then I feel myself sinking when I see them resuscitating him and he's not coming back. So I don't ever want to feel that pain again. So when it comes to forgiveness, I'm going to forgive people. I was just talking to a friend yesterday about forgiving one of her friends. Listen, you can forgive them and not ever deal with them again. But that poison that TD Jakes talked about when you're walking around with the unforgiveness in your body and all that, that's real. And until you get that off you, man, you're going to fail at everything. I got to forgive people. You heard me and my ex-wife, we were married 15 years. It wasn't a bad marriage. It was just, we are not clicking. We were too young to be married and we raised these boys and man, we can't do this no more. We're growing out of this. And to this day, you know, I respect her. I'll never let my boys disrespect her. I never let people disrespect her. We never even talked about our divorce to people. It was just like, you know, we moved on from that. And I forgave the relationship. I didn't like the marriage. And not the person. So I had to understand that there's a relationship and there's a situation side. And that's what I look at when I say forgiveness or when think of forgiveness.
Yeah, that's a real good question, right? Real, and as you're talking through this, AJ, I'm gonna hit you with another one, right? You know, and here's what I was thinking. Like as you were talking through that, it's just and this entire conversation just brings me to the fact of when we talk about certain things, and it's very important to give language and meaning to who we are and what we do, right? Because a lot of people are walking in a place of not really knowing who they are and why they are, right? And to some degree, I still myself kind of work through some of that today. And so my question to you is, what is your definition of man? And what is your definition of fatherhood?
Wow.
Of being a man, not just man itself, because man could be just like you got a dick, you got a penis, right? But what is that full body definition of a man and fatherhood behind that?
I'll start with man. Being a man for me, and I know a lot of times due to this social climate, we don't want to really speak into gender roles. It's taboo because of women's lib and everything else, Me Too movements. You know, I'm not downplaying it. I'm just putting it out as it is. We don't want to. I don't like speaking gender roles, but in the perspective of man that I have is my father being that strong man, bringing the money home, taking care of the house, doing what you can, even at your deficit. My father never graduated high school. The streets was his moniker. My grandfather, he was a pastor. Went outside, he did all his dirt as in like get his hands dirty, come back, feed the family. He bought houses, land. He took care of the family. That's man for me. Just being able to provide, being able to cultivate, being able to protect, which correlates to fatherhood as well. When I, and this is parenting in general, and I want to kind of touch on this because I think it's very important. I have both genders as my children. As a father, I had to make sure that I never put them in a situation that they're not prepared for. From the beginning, as being a father, I was a new father. I was a new father of a newborn child. And then she became 1 year old. Then I was a new father of a 1-year-old. And then I had a son. So I was a new father of a 2-year-old and a newborn child. And every year I became a new father. I'm a new father right now with a 21-year-old son. So as they grew, I grew. So fatherhood for me is ever evolving. At some point, my son's going to be 40 years old. And I'm going to be looking at him as a new father of a 40-year-old man. And I'm going to only be able to address the issues that I've been through with him, you know, not the issues that I will go through in life in the future. But every step of his way, I'm pretty much going through fatherhood like he's going through life. You know, I'm doing the same with my daughter. My daughter right now is 23 years old. I don't know if you have a 23-year-old daughter, but I can tell you for sure, I don't like it. I don't like it. I love her to pieces, but she acts like me. And it's scary for me because she acts like me. You know, every portion of life, she acts like me, and it's kind of scary for me. But for fatherhood's sakes, you have to, in my mind, cultivate them and do it in a way that's not gender specific. It's a real short story. If you take people and take away the gender and just say they're people, they all need the same thing. If you break your leg, the healing's going to be the same. If they have a heart condition, typically the healing's going to be the same. Mentally, social, emotional situations, they prescribe the very same thing. But when it comes to the basic things like love and affection, it turns. Oh, no, that's not going to work for a boy. That's not going to work for a girl. I told you I'm a horseman. I love horses. My kids had horses growing up. We've had horses forever. I got chickens in the backyard. I'm black hillbilly. It's fine. Whatever. If you take your horse as a child, as a foal, as a baby, and you take that horse and you feed him hay, you let him drink from the mom till he get ready, you start feeding him hay, you start feeding him corn. You want to ride this horse. You want this horse to be great. You take this horse out, you're doing groundwork, which is typically walking them around with a little leash around they harness, and just teaching them, you know, these are the things you're going to go through when you experience walking, you know, next to a person. And as they get older, you're putting saddles on their back so they can feel the weight on their back. You know, you're talking to them. You're blowing in their nose so they can kind of like, it's an old Indian ritual, so they can smell your soul, and you know they know this is who's who. You know, their sense of smell is really keen. So you're really cultivating this horse. You're cultivating the horse until one day, 2 years later, 2 years it takes most of the times to ride this horse. You get to jump on his back, and you and that horse turns into Booker T and Ving Rhames on Rosewood. That horse gonna do anything you tell him to do. It doesn't matter if it's a stallion or a gelding or a mare, which is a female horse. It don't matter how you do which one they are. If you go through those steps, you're gonna have that awesome horse. And I take that same mentality and put it into my children or our children. I deal with a bunch of maybe 200 kids a year, and we do football and cheer. Shout out first off to BMW Elite Sports. Just let y'all know, 227 out here. We are the feeder program for them, mentoring, tutoring. Just let y'all know, throw it out there. I deal with 200 kids a year, and when I look at it, I have to look at them as needing the same. The boys on the football team need the same thing as the girls on the cheer team. When you get into the mentoring spot, the girls need the same type of mentors the boys need. When it comes down to tutoring, you have girls that have ADHD and learning disabilities just as boys. It's the same thing when it comes to need. But when it comes to the social concept or perspectives, we tear it away. Oh no boy need to be on this daddy chest. No, that's crazy. You're gonna just crawl up in his lap. Nobody crawled in anybody's lap, first of all. If he's 16, he's laying next to his daddy, head on the chest, he went to sleep. I'm going to go with it. Right. I need it more than he does. So for me, fatherhood is being able to cultivate that child. I brought the horse story up because I tell everybody with animals, if you feed them and give them the exact thing that they should have, they'll be the exact animal they should be and live forever. If I feed my chickens corn and grain, they're going to give me eggs that's going to give me great food. And if I continue to do that, they'll never pervert their purpose, ever, if you give them the things they should have. If you do this with a child, the same thing with the horse. If you cultivate them, start putting a little weight on them, getting them to understand this is your soul, this is who I am, I'm here to protect you and lead you. You do that with your child, you're going to get that same person. They'll never pervert their purpose. Everything that you put into them is going to be who they are. And that's how I look at fatherhood. I got a friend named Kitty Nitro. Same conversation. Talked about showing affection to his son. And I know he don't mind me telling this story because he just told me this story on Facebook. He said, man, listen, my son is 15 years old and he's autistic. He said, everywhere I go, my son wants to hold my hand. He said, I'm outside across the street. I'm walking through the store. I'm holding my son's hand. He said, sometimes we at home, he just wants me to hold his hand. He's 15 years old. He's dealing with autism. So now, what do you say to this father who has to hold his son's hand, who's hugging him, who's holding him? Only if he's dealing with a situation he needs that love? No, because children that deal with autism, they are as raw as a person as you can find. I need this. And you give it to them, and if you don't, then you're going to see the trauma escalated with them. Yeah. It's no different than what our boys are dealing with and our daughters are dealing with outside of having a disorder. Kenny Nitro, for me, is that guy who says, listen, I don't care what anybody say. I'm going to hug my son. I'm going to hold his hand. He said, yeah, sometimes it seems people look at us weird. I'm holding a 15-year-old boy hand crossing the street. Yeah. But that's what fatherhood is. No different than motherhood, man.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, man. I think part of what that ties manhood, being a man and being a father together is and I know this for sure about Real and the vibe I get from you is the same, is that I don't care what the people outside of my four walls have to say about me, right? I'm going to do, as for me and my household, I'm going to do what I think is best for us to be successful and for my kids to be successful. Because it is, when I'm gone, they're what's here, they're what's left. And so it's very important to be about that. And I think one of the things that we also need to think about as men, again, when it comes to the language, is think about, because one of the things that came to mind was when people kept using the terms gay or feminine, right? I thought about the same things as like the use of the word toxic or the phrase toxic masculinity. It's being used inappropriately, right? Or incorrectly. I think the perfect term for that, if you had an opinion about what was going on, what you saw in the picture with Smokey Norfolk, is that maybe it made you feel like it was inappropriate, right? And you can have a conversation about what's inappropriate or appropriate, right? So if we're talking about Allen Iverson and his son and him kissing his young son in the mouth, I could feel like that's inappropriate. It's not me saying that, his kid is going to wake up gay, right? Or his kid is going to be extra feminine when he gets a certain age, right? We also don't talk about how the way we treat our boys, we overcompensate for certain things, and then they grow up and they be over masculine because they're trying to compensate for something that doesn't really exist, right? And so we have to be mindful of all of those things, man. And I think it's really, really important in that fact, and we begin to define what manhood is for you and what fatherhood is for you, and be able to have a conversation about it, man, because there are people out here that don't have those experiences, right? One of the things that resonated with me with your story, and now I got to go. I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole. When we get off is the blowing in the horse's nose, right? That resonates with me, like, because it's an old, I think you said it was an old Indian proverb. It's like you blow in a horse's nose, they know who you are. And if you put that next to the idea of raising your kids, I think we all trying to breathe that same life into our children. And what we have to be mindful and conscious of is that what we breathe into them isn't always all positive messages, right? Sometimes we breathe bad things into them, right? And if we're not mindful of that, we begin to create this thing that we are not necessarily, that we don't even know that we've created. And then when they grow up, you're like, well, where did you get that from? Well, look at the source. Look at the source, take a step back, and remember that as a child, you breathed that into him or her, right? And we can definitely go on for hours in terms of this whole gender conversation. We always have this conversation because I have a certain perspective on that as well. But I definitely, as we're wrapping up, I definitely appreciate you coming on and being transparent and sharing your opinions and thoughts and your experiences with fatherhood and your emotions. And what I want to do before we wrap up is make sure that you have an opportunity to breathe your essence into this episode, right? And into our audience, right? Let them know. One, you gave a mention of, your mentor, and I want you to be able to, let the people know what it is you do and where that is. So if there are people that are close to, close in area and proximity to you, they can connect, right? Because it's very important that mentoring is very important. And then also the thing that you would like to leave, leave with the audience and for them to think about and grasp from this conversation.
Thank you, man. Thank you. We start off as a football team. Olympia Field Ducks is who we were. We're now the Red Raiders, and we're coupled up with District 227 here out in the Rich Central, Rich South, all those, the Rich Township. We've coupled with them to do football, cheer, dance, get into the school, do some mentoring, do some tutoring right now. For a couple of years, we just kind of like been on our phones doing tutoring. But with my family, we've created that space to help our community. And this year is bigger. We're getting better, and we always need participants to help us to show model citizens or model humans to our kids. We have a website, the BMW Elite Sports. We have a tutoring and mentoring website, which is livingfullessence.live. So you can always come and just check down with us. One thing that I would like to just leave is I told my story about my father. We have good and bad to our fathers, to your point. I learned from all sides. I tell people I embrace my father for everything he was, good and bad. I love him for being a street urchin because it taught me how to be a street urchin. I was a street urchin. I love him for when we got to New Orleans, he would go to the church and board up the church before the hurricanes come in because they showed his side, his empathy side. I took that from him. So love that father for who he is, even in his deficit. Today I wear a gold chain with a 6-point star on it because my father was a gangster disciple, and people think of it like, that's crazy, you a gangbang. No, this is homage to my father. And it may seem crazy, but me and my brothers, all of us, we did it. Because this is what we knew he was great at. And it may be negative, but it was what he was great at. So embracing fatherhood in whatever aspect it can be, do it. Love him. That's pretty much what I got. And don't let anybody tear down your way of being a father. You're learning every day how to be a father of a new kid every day. And you're going to make mistakes. Call it what you call it.
For sure.
So,
for sure.
The guy.
yeah, absolutely, man. And I didn't want to do this prematurely. I don't know if Real still had some questions, I should say, that he wanted to kind of dig into but before we wrap up. So, Real, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. But if not, take us out of here, bro.
All right, just a couple things, man. I think us as fathers, we are human beings, and I think that involves a act of learning how to balance, right? We keep talking about we can't over masculinize our kids, and I think that comes from Black men having a stigma on homosexuality. I think a lot of times it's more of a don't do that, that's gay. I don't want my son to be gay. Don't do that. It falls in the line of you just. I think we need to relax. I think we need to evolve as fathers. Don't shun the boys who want to embrace. You know what I mean? Let go of that stigma. You know what I'm saying? That's exactly what it is. Instead of, we really need to man up. And by man up, I mean, man up, move to another level in fatherhood. And when you pour into your kids, they pour back into you, right? So that's what I believe the Smokey Norfolk picture was showing, that the child was actually pouring back what Smokey had already poured into him. When you pour out, you empty out. You know what I mean? And when your son is bringing that back, he fills you back up, and it's called love. It's simply love. Two things I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna end this. Breathing into the nose, so key. The Bible, God made man. He breathed into where? His nostrils. He breathed his spirit into man. I think we need to do that as well as fathers. As Brother AJ does with his horses. I think that's so key. That's ancient. That's been since the beginning of time. The second thing you need to take away is, even for those who don't read the Bible, of course, everybody know Jesus had 12 disciples. There was one who was always laying on Jesus. It's
Right.
it said the one who Jesus loved. He's always described as the one whom Jesus loved. That was John. John was always laying in his bosom. John was always laying next to him. Jesus, the reason it said Jesus, the one whom Jesus loved, is because Jesus never shunned him. Lay on me, lay next to me, just like we do our youngest boys. You know what I mean? The boys come and they cuddle up under us. We don't shun them off. We throw our arm around them and we talk to them. That is a loving thing. So I believe that Smokey Norfolk is that's a way of showing love. That's all it is. It's nothing more, nothing less. You love your child. Love is an action, is not an emotion. Yeah, everybody just continue to be awesome. AJ, man, we really appreciate you, man. You're an awesome father. We love you, man. Everything that you're doing for the youth, man, you're essential. You know what I mean? You are carrying on your father's legacy and building from it. You know what I mean? So we salute you with that, man.
Thank you,
Salute to all the awesome black dads out there, man. We love everybody. Thank y'all for listening. One love.
Appreciate it, bro. And we out.
We out.
Appreciate it, bro. Have a good day, man.
Thank you, you too, bro.
Yep.